Finding land for a tiny house, it sounds really simple. When you first start dreaming about it, you picture a quiet piece of property, and maybe some trees, and maybe a mountain view, and your tiny house sitting perfectly in the middle of it all. No rent, no neighbors, right on top of you, just freedom. But once you actually start looking, you realize pretty quickly that finding tiny house land is one of the hardest parts of the entire journey, harder than the build, harder than the design, and sometimes than the budget. Zoning laws, utilities, access permits, and neighbors, costs, all of it shows up at once. So, in this video, I'm going to walk you through how to actually find tiny house land in the real world, not the fantasy version, but the practical step by step works in most cases version. Okay. The first thing you need to understand is that land for a tiny house is not just about the dirt, it's about the rules attached to the dirt. Most people start by looking at price and location, but zoning is what decides whether you can legally live there in a tiny house at all. You could find a beautiful, cheap lot and still not be allowed to put your tiny house on it. That's the part that surprises people and costs them money when they skip the research. And before you fall in love with any piece of land, you need to check the county zoning code and building department rules. You're looking for minimum dwelling size requirements, RV restrictions, accessory dwelling unit rules, and whether tiny house on wheels are classified as homes or vehicles. This one step saves people from the most expensive mistake, buying land they can't use. Now, here's where most successful tiny house land searches actually begin. Not with listings, but with counties. Instead of browsing land sites first, pick the county or region you want. Then research their rules. Rural counties are generally more flexible, okay? Agricultural zones, rural residential zones, and unincorporated areas tend to be more tiny house friendly. Dense cities and suburbs are usually the strictest of them all. Smaller towns sometimes allow more exceptions if you talk to the right office and ask the right questions. You call the county planning department and literally ask, what are the requirements for a small dwelling or a tiny house? You'll be shocked on how often they give you clear direction if you just ask plainly. And once you know the rules in an area and are workable, when you start the actual land search, and this is where people limit themselves too much, okay? They only look at popular land websites and assume that's the whole market, and it's not, okay? Good tiny house land is often found through local methods like local classifieds, community boards, farm supply stores, and small town Facebook groups. Often they produce better leads than, the big national listing sites. Rural property owners frequently don't list nationally. They sell locally or by word of mouth. Another method too that works incredibly well is simply just driving the area. I know that sounds old school, okay, but it works. Look for sale by owner signs. Look for unused back lots. Look for property with multiple structures where an owner might consider leasing a corner of the land. When you find something interesting, write down the address and check county records for the owner. Many tiny houses have successfully found land just by making polite, direct content and asking. And let's talk about buying versus leasing because this is where strategy matters. Buying land gives you control, stability, and long-term security, but it comes with a higher upfront cost and responsibility. And leasing land lowers your upfront costs and gives flexibility, but it introduces risks. Okay, the landowner could change their mind, sell, or alter the terms. If your tiny house is on wheels, leasing is often a smart starting move. If your tiny house is on a foundation, ownership is usually safer. Some people lease first, then buy later, once they know the area works for them. And one of the most overlooked options is placing your tiny house on someone else's existing property. Backyard placements are more common than most people realize. Homeowners with acreage often have unused space and may welcome the rental income. I know I would. This arrangement can also simplify utilities because you may be able to connect to existing water and power. The key here is approach. You don't pitch it as I want to live in your backyard. You pitch it as a clean, quiet, well managed small home that adds value in rent. Photos, a written plan, and proof of insurance help build that trust. Tiny house communities are another path. And while they're not everywhere, okay, they are growing. And these communities are specifically designed for small homes and usually already handle zoning and infrastructure. The trade off is cost and rules. Lot rent can sometimes approach apartment prices. And the communities often have design standards and regulations. But for many people, the legal clarity and infrastructure access, they're worth it, especially as a first step into a tiny living. Utilities are the next major filter when evaluating land. Raw land is cheaper, but raw land without utilities can become expensive fast. Bringing in power, drilling a well, or installing a septic can cost more than the land itself. Always price utility setup before buying. Never assume, call your local utility companies and get estimates. Ask neighbors what they paid. If you're planning off grid systems, price those fully. Solar, batteries, water storage, your septic alternatives. Not just the starter version, but the real version you'll need year round. Access is another hidden deal breaker for a lot. A lot can look perfect on a map, but be terrible in reality. Check road access, slope, soil stability, and seasonal conditions. Can a delivery truck reach it? Can your tiny house be moved into onto it? Does the road flood? Does snow block it? Visit in person, whenever possible. Walk it, drive it, try it in bad weather if you can even. And let's talk about neighbors because they matter more than people expect. Even in rural areas, neighbors can influence your experience. Some are supportive, some are not. If you're placing a tiny house near other homes, talk to nearby residents first. Friendly conversations early prevent complaints later. Complaints trigger inspections, and inspections trigger enforcement. And enforcement can shut down your plan. A 5-minute friendly introduction can prevent a 5-month legal headache. Price strategy matters too. Many people overpay for land because they shop emotionally instead of strategically. Tiny house land does not need to be perfect. It needs to be usable and legal. Views are nice. Location is nice, but legality and infrastructure matters more. You can improve your land over time. You cannot easily fix zoning. Looking for ugly but legal over beautiful but restricted is another strong strategy is looking for land with existing small structures, sheds, cabins, or old mobile home sites. These properties often have utility hookups and established permits. Reusing approved home site is far easier than starting from scratch. Even if the old structure must be removed, the legal footprint often remains usable. Owner financing is another powerful tool that tiny housers underuse. Many rural land sellers are willing to finance directly with a down payment and a monthly installment. This can make land ownership possible without traditional bank loans. Always get terms in writing and record legally, but don't assume bank financing is the only option. And let me give you a practical search flow that works. First, pick 3 counties, not one. Second, confirm tiny house legality in each of them. And third, call planning departments. And fourth, search local listings and groups. Fifth, drive the area. Contact owners directly. Verify utility access. Talk to the neighbors and confirm permits. And only then negotiate price. One mistake people make is waiting for perfect land. Perfect delays progress. Good legal land beats perfect restricted land every time. You can upgrade your land later. You can't easily override county code. Timing also helps. Land prices and availability shift seasonally. Winter and late fall often bring better deals because fewer buyers are looking. Sellers are more negotiable when listing have been sitting. If it's been sitting a while. Don't be afraid to make respectful offers below asking. rural land often has margins built in. If you're flexible on location, your odds improve dramatically. The tighter your location requirements, the harder the search. Many successful tiny house owners choose lifestyle first, geography second, and end up loving places they never originally considered. You should also think about your long term plan when choosing land. Are you staying 5 years or are you staying forever? Do you want to expand later? Add a workshop, a garden, extra structures. Buy with your future in mind, not just your move in day. Insurance and addressability are often forgotten steps. Can you get a legal address there? Can you receive mail and emergency services? Can you insure your tiny house at that location? These are practical questions that affect daily life more than scenery does. So let's be honest for a moment. Finding tiny house land, it takes more work than most people expect. It's not one search, it's multiple paths at once, online, offline, local, direct contact, government calls, all of it. But the people who succeed treat it like a project, not a wish. They track leads, they make calls, they verify facts, they follow up. The good news is this though. People are doing it every day, not just influencers, not just builders. Regular people with regular budgets are finding workable land by by being persistent and practical. Creativity beats convenience in this process. So if you're serious about finding tiny house land, start this week. Pick counties, make calls, join local groups, drive areas, and ask questions. Expect some no answers. They're normal, but each one moves you closer to a yes. Because the truth is, tiny house living doesn't really begin when the house is built. It begins when the land question is solved. Once you secure the right spot, legal, usable, and affordable, everything else becomes easier. And when you finally park your tiny house on that land that works, land you choose carefully and intentionally, it feels even better knowing you didn't just get lucky, you got informed, you got strategic, and you made it happen. Thanks for watching. Check this video out on the right, and we'll catch you on the next one.